Hey, good afternoon, and good morning, and good evening, and a Chag Urim Sameach, and happy Hanukkah to everyone. We are learning chapter 24, Perek Kaf Daled. It's another incredibly gripping chapter of the David and Shaul, and they're chasing, Shaul's chasing after David. And here we're going to see how the tables are turned, where David has the upper hand over Shaul and how he behaves and interacts with Shaul. It's going to be fascinating. So it says here at the beginning, Pasuk Aleph, Vahi ka'asher shav Shaul me'acharei Pelishtim, vayagidu lo lemor, hine David b'midbar en Gedi. And it was when Shaul had returned from following the Pelishtim that they told him, saying, David is in the desert of En Gedi. And here we can see that clearly it doesn't tell you anything about the war with the Pelishtim or the battle, that it must have been, like we said last week, that God, either through a physical messenger or through an angel, had devised that the Pelishtim coming out just to get Shaul to leave in order for David to escape to En Gedi. Bet, ויקח שאול 3,000 איש בחור מכל ישראל, וילך לבקש את דוד ואנשיו על פני צורי היעלים. And Shaul took 3,000 men from all Israel, and he went to seek David and his men on the rocks of the wild goats, Surei Hayelim. And we know that anyone who's ever been in Israel or travels in Israel, we know that there are certain cliff tops and rocks which are perfect for ibexes and goats and all those other things there in Israel. Those natural, those animals that love that. That's the area. And if you go to the national parks in Israel, that's even the ibex is the symbol of the national parks in Israel. So you see that from here. Gimel, Vayavo el Gidrotzon, al Haderech, Visham Me'ara, and he came to the sheepcotes on the way, and there was a Me'ara, a cave.
So just to clarify,
Yeah.
so like when we last left Shaul, okay, he had decided that he was going to fight the Plishtim, okay, and now he vacillates and he goes back to fight David. Like
As in it was a ruse. There was no battle. It's like there was a small skirmish. The Plishtim came and they vanished as quickly as they were there. It's either that's telling you, you know what, it's not important to the narrative. We're focusing on David and Shaul. Or it's telling you, no, there was nothing of any substance. It wasn't just we're focusing on David and Shaul. There was no battle. Like they came and they ran away. It was there. God did that just to get Shaul to give David an opportunity to get away. And David got away, and that's it. That's all we learned from that episode.
Oh, okay.
Very interesting. So he goes to the Gidrotzon on the way, like the sheep pens, and there's a cave. And Shaul came in, lehasechet raglav, to cover his feet, which is a euphemism for going to the bathroom. V'David v'anashav b'yarketei ha'me'ara yoshvim. And his men were standing at the far side of the cave. Now, it's a very interesting question, which all the commentators ask, which is, Shaul is searching for David, and he knows he's En Gedi. He's going to relieve himself in the cave. Fair enough. Why didn't he have anyone check out the cave to see if he was there? Great question. And I'm going to begin with the ArtScroll commentary, and I'm going to end with telling you a story about Robert the Bruce, a Scottish king, but we'll begin here. It says here, the Mizmor Nun Zayin, number 57, describes in detail how David survived on the run from Shaul. On Pasuk Gimel there, Targum Yonatan quotes the Midrash that Shaul did not check the cave to see if David was there because there was a huge spider's web over the front of the cave. Shaul assumed that David's men couldn't possibly be in hiding there. And then I write, please note the story of Robert the Bruce, the Scottish king on the run from the English, who hid in a cave, and the story of the spider. And there's two variants of the story of Robert the Bruce in the cave. One is it's exactly the same as our story. He was hiding in there, and a miraculous spider's web. Clearly, the Christian Scottish monks had learned their Bible, and they created a legend of Robert the Bruce. The other legend about Robert the Bruce is not that there was a huge spider's web which miraculously grew to protect him, but rather he saw a spider getting up and falling down, and getting up and falling down, and getting up and falling down, and he decided from that not to give up. And in his lowest ebb, his lowest ebb, not his lowest web, his lowest ebb, he decided to continue to rebel against the English and to make a stand, and he created a independent Scottish kingdom. Didn't last very long, but it lasted. And clearly you can see that the Christian monks at the time must have had an impact on Robert the Bruce, and they learned from our chapter. Look at David, the rightful king, hiding from Shaul. It's exactly the same as Robert the Bruce hiding from Edward Longshanks, and then later his son Edward II. All of that was fair game because they knew what was going on, and eventually he won. But I'm just saying it's interesting here that you can read a passage which has completely to do with Shaul and David, and yet other people can take it. So if anyone's interested in that, you can try and research Robert the Bruce and the spider. But it's all from here, because that's the answer. How come he didn't check? Why did Shaul not check? He didn't check because there was no simanim. There was no signs of any human entrance of any kind, because there was such a huge spider's web, which, according to Targum Yonatan, had been miraculously filled in by the spider within a few minutes, which made it look like it'd been there for days, if not weeks or longer. Pasuk Daled. Vayamru anshe David elav, hine hayom asher amar Hashem elecha, hine anochi noten et oivecha oyivcha biyadecha. So I want you to notice here, we have what's known as a kri uktiv, something which is pronounced one way, but written another way. It's written Aleph Vav Yud, Vet Yud, Chaf Sofit, but it's pronounced Oyivcha. Oyivcha implies your singular enemy, as opposed to Oivecha, which implies your enemies. Okay? So is it your singular enemy or your plural enemies? Va'asita lo kasher yitav be'enecha, vayakom David, vayichrot et kenaf ha'me'il, asher leShaul balat. This is a big pasuk. David's men said to him, behold the day concerning which God said to you, behold, I shall deliver your enemy in the singular into your hands, and you shall do to him as it will seem good in your eyes. And David arose and secretly cut the hem of Shaul's garment. And then it says in Pasuk Hey, Vahi acharechen, vayach lev David oto, al asher karatet kanaf asher leShaul. Afterwards, David's heart was pounding. He felt guilty. He was anguished, for he had cut Shaul's skirt. 6. Vayomer le'anashav, חלילה לי מאדוני אם אעשה את הדבר הזה לאדוני, למשיח אדוני, למשיח Hashem, לשלוח ידי בו, כי משיח אדוני הוא. And he said to his man, God forbid it for me, that I should do this thing to my Lord, to God's anointed, to stretch forth my hand upon him, for he is God's anointed. And then it says, Vaishasa David et anashav bedevarim, v'lo netanam lakum el Shaul, v'Shaul kam me'ha'me'ara, vayelech badarech. And David stayed his men with these words, and did not allow them to rise up against Shaul. And Shaul arose from the cave and went on the way. We read these verses, and it's very clear that in David's hands was Shaul's life. He had the ability to kill Shaul, to cause him great harm. And yet all he does is tear his cloak. And that, even of itself, made him feel very guilty. We're going to have a look at the commentaries on this to try and understand what exactly is going on. The Radak to Shmuel Aleph says as follows. There is no previous mention of this prophecy, which had been conveyed by Shmuel, Gad, or Natan. To David's men, it was clear that this prophecy referred to Shaul. Your enemy, singular, shall be given over to your hand, even though he was God's anointed. David, however, interpreted the prophecy as reference to the future enemies, but not to Shaul. The disagreement is reflected in the word your enemy, which is spelled in the plural. Your enemies, that's the kri, sorry, that's the ktiv, but it's pronounced ukri, but it's pronounced in the singular, oyivcha, your enemy. David's men saw Shaul as the enemy because he was the leader of the pursuing army. But David interpreted the prophecy as referring to the many enemies he would face once he became king. And this is something that we have to look at. Prophecy is often in life very ambiguous. We never really know who the enemies or the enemy is. For Shaul's men, sorry, for David's men, it was clear. It was Shaul. But for David, no, it's oivecha, it's enemies in general, it's non-Jewish enemies, it's not oivcha, your enemy. And here we ask, why did David not kill Shaul? The Ralbag, Gersonides, says, despite the fact that David would have been allowed to kill Shaul, since Shaul was pursuing him to kill him, then he's a rodef. And therefore, when someone is going to kill you, you are allowed to kill them before they can do it. He decided against it for two reasons. Number one, Shaul was God's anointed. And number two, I got one of my favorite words, he did not want to introduce to the Jewish people the concept of regicide. No one wants to believe in it. Regicide is not a good thing. If you want to be a king, you don't kill the king before you, because all you're doing is encouraging yourself to be killed. Similarly, as a rabbi, you don't want to publicly bash other rabbis, because all you're doing is you're encouraging others to bash you. So did a little bit of self-preservation there by David. Why did David cut Shaul's cloak? Ma'am Lohez says here, David arose. This was an elevation for David. He understood that by tearing the king's robe, as, there's an H should be removed there, as Shmuel had prophesied way back when, the kingdom was indeed to be his. David arose because afterwards it became known what he had done, and all agreed that the kingdom was rightfully his. Now let's remind ourselves of that prophecy. At the end of the battle of Amalek, when Shaul spared Agag and the choicest cattle, Shmuel killed Agag, the king of Amalek, and then he told Shaul, "You will not be king." And he tore his cloak. And there was all ambiguity. Did he tear his own cloak? Did he tear Shaul's cloak? But he said, whoever will tear your cloak in the future, that person will rule. But David here feels guilty. Rashi brings the following. Shnei mikraot halalu ketuvin shelo kesidran, ela kevan שהתחיל לדבר בכריתת המעיל, קרא כל דבריו. ואמר שאף בכריתת המעיל נתחרט. There are two verses are written in reverse order. But since he began to speak of the cutting of the coat, he finished off the matter concerning it and stated that he even regretted cutting the coat. ואחר כך חוזר לדברו הראשון ואומר על שאמרו לו אנשיו הנה היום וגומר השיב להם חלילה לי. And afterwards, he returns to his first subject and states that upon his men's statements, behold, concerning this day, he retorted to them, may the Lord forbid it from me. So he's saying two things. Number one, absolutely not. It's absolutely forbidden to kill the king. And number two, it was even wrong of me to cut his garment, because cutting his garment is not showing the proper kavod. The Ma'am Noez explains in more detail, and he quotes a number of rabbinic teachings. Our rabbis taught in a Braita, Tanu Rabbanan. This is what David said. What difference is there between cutting off a tzitzit corner and cutting off a person's head? For one sin leads to another. When a great person transgresses a minor sin, he immediately recognizes what the likely consequences of the sin will be. Rabbi Nehemiah said, this is why David's heart began pounding, for he denied Shaul the mitzvah of tzitzit. Our sages also said, whoever disgraces garments will ultimately have no benefit from them. As we read in the very first pasuk of Melachim Aleph, and David HaMelech was Ba Bayamim, he was advanced in years, and they covered him with garments, but they would not make him warm. From here we can learn the severity of the attribute of jinn, of judgment. Even though cutting off the corner of Shaul's garment was an act of great restraint on David's part, in that he did not harm the king, there's still a fault in the deed. Alternatively, David's heart began pounding because he foresaw that his kingdom too would be torn in two. And this happened in the days of his grandson, Rehoboam. The prophet Achiyah prophesied the division of Israel when he took Yeroboam's garment and tore it into 12 pieces, representing that the kingdom and the 12 tribes would be broken up. So we see here, even an act of restraint, even an act when he could have killed Shaul, he felt bad about it. So why did he feel bad? Because even that was too much against the king. And now we're going to have the conversation. Once Shaul leaves the cave, there's going to be a discussion here where David confronts Shaul. Pasuk Chet. Vayakom David, acharei chen, vayatze me'amme'ara, ויקרא אחרי שאול לאמור, אדוני המלך, ויבט שאול אחריו, ויקוד דוד אפיים ארצה וישתחו. And David arose afterwards and emerged from the cave after Shaul saying, my lord the king. And Shaul looked behind him, and David bowed with his face to the ground, and he prostrated himself. Okay, look at the great kavod, my lord king. And he bows down to him. Tet, Vayomer David leShaul, and David said to Shaul, Lama tishma et divrei adam le'emor hinei David mivakesh ra'atecha. Why do you listen to the words of one man saying, behold, David seeks your harm? Who is he referring to here? Doeg? One of his other advisors? But he doesn't blame Shaul. Look at this. Let's go down. Why do you listen? It says here, Lama tishma, lama tegabel alai, lashon hara shel doeg. Why should you listen? Why should you accept upon yourself David's slander, his lashon hara, concerning me? Why do you listen to him? Okay, we talked about doeg, is that teller of half-truths, who's an opportunist and someone who was jealous of the kahuna, jealous of David. Nothing could make him happy. Yud, הנה היום הזה ראו עיניך את אשר נתנך השם היום בידי במערה, ואמר להרגך ותחס עליך ואומר לא אשלח ידי באדוני כי משיח אדוני הוא. Behold, this day your eyes have seen how God delivered you today into my hand in the cave. And one said to kill you, but one had pity on you. And I said, I shall not stretch forth my hand against my Lord, for he is God's anointed. For one said this and one said that. What's he talking about? Says Rashi, Harei kan chaserim shte tevot. There's two words missing here. Ve'amar ha'omeh she'eharagcha v'tachas nafshi alecha. One said that I should kill you, but what? My soul had pity on you. It was my nefesh. I decided, everyone said to kill you. And I said, no. I had pangs. My nefesh held me back. My neshama. Yud Aleph, Va'avi, and father, my father. He calls his father-in-law my father. Look at the great kavod here. Re'eh, gam re'eh et kanaf me'ilcha biyadi, ki bicharti et kanaf me'ilcha, v'lo haragticha, da ure'eh, ki en biyadi ra'a v'pesha, v'lo chatati lach, v'ata tzoded nafshi lekachta. See the skirt of your coat in my hand, for that I cut the coat, and I did not kill you. Know and see that there is neither evil nor transgression in my hand, and I have not sinned against you. But you are still stalking my soul to take it, trying to trap me. Yishpot Adonai beini uveinecha, unkamani Hashem imeka, v'yadi lo tiyeh bach. May God judge between me and you, and may Hashem avenge me of you, but my hand shall not be upon you. I want God to judge you, but I'm not going to punish you, because I can't hurt you. Ka'asher yomar mashal hakadmoni, meresha'im yetzeh resha, v'yadi lo tiyeh bach. As says the proverb of the ancient one, who is the mashal hakadmoni, from the wicked comes forth wickedness, and my hand shall not be upon you. Acharei mi yatsa melech Yisrael, acharei mi yatsa rodef, acharei kelev met, acharei parosh echad. And who has the king of Israel come forth? Who are you going after? Who are you looking after? A dead dog? A little fly? A flea? What are you doing? V'haya Hashem l'dayan v'shafat beini uveinecha. And once again, may Hashem become a judge, and he shall judge between me and you. V'yereha v'yarev et rivi v'ishpateni miyadecha. And he shall see and plead my cause and exact justice for me from your hand. And that's the end of David's speech. The proverb, the ancient one, says Rashi, who is the Mashal Kadmoni? This is Kadmon Shel Olam. It's HaTorah, Shehi Mashlo Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The proverb of the ancient one of the world, i.e. the Torah, which is the proverb of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A dead dog and a fly. Manuel says here, David implied that the king's hatred for him had grown so severe that Shaul had come to view his own son-in-law as a dead dog. Others explain that David likened himself to a dog, the most faithful of animals, but now he was like dead, for he had been persecuted and driven from his place. David wanted to belittle himself in Shaul's eyes. I'm not worthy of being jealous of. I'm nothing but a dead dog, or even I'm nothing but a flea or a fly. May God be a judge and let him judge between me and you. Continues the Me'am Loez. There are those who say this repetitive verse was David talking to Avner. First it talks about Doeg. Now we're going to talk about Avner, who was Shaul's general. Because Avner advised and incited Shaul against David. As our sages taught, why was Avner killed? Why did he deserve that punishment? Because he did not allow reconciliation between David and Shaul, and we'll see that in Shmuel Bet. Others explain that David was talking to Shaul saying, God is the only one who can adjudicate between us. Why? Because we're both God's anointed. Now let's see how Shaul replies to David's heartfelt speech. He says as follows, ויהי ככלות דוד לדבר את הדברים האלה אל שאול, ויאמר שאול, הקולך זה בני דוד, וישא שאול קולו, ויבך. And it was when David finished speaking these words to Shaul, that Shaul said, is this your voice, my son, David? And we can see when that melancholy, when that jealousy is removed from Shaul, he remembers his son-in-law David in beautiful terms, my son David. And Shaul raised his voice and he cried, Vayomer el David, and he said to David, Tzadikata mimeni, you are more righteous than me, in very much a similar language to Yehuda, what Yehuda says to Tamar, Tzadka mimeni, Tzadikata mimeni, ki ata gamaltani hatova, va'ani gamalticha, ticha hara'a. Why are you more righteous than I? For you have repaid me with goodness, while I have repaid you with evil. ואתה הגדת היום את אשר עשית איתי טובה, את אשר סגרני אדוני בידך, ולא הרגתני. And you have shown today how you have dealt well with me, how God delivered me into your hand, but you did not kill me. וכי ימצא איש את אויבו, ושילחו בדרך טובה, ואדוני ישלמך טובה תחת היום הזה אשר עשית לי. For when a man finds his enemy, does he send him away safely? And may God repay you with goodness for what you have done to me on this day. Kaf, ve'ata, and now, hine, behold, yadati, I have known, ki maloch timloch, that you will surely reign, that double language, maloch timloch, the kama biyadcha mamlechet Yisrael, and the kingdom of Israel will be established in your hand. ואתה הישבעה לי באדוני, אם תכרית את זרי אחריי, ואם תשמיד את שמי מבית אבי. Swear to me by God that you will not cut off my seed, and you will not destroy my name from my father's house. וישבע דוד לשאול, and David swore to Shaul, וילך שאול אל ביתו. And Shaul went to his home. ודוד ואנשיו עלו על המצודה. But David and his men, they went back to the stronghold, telling you, although on first glance this is a beautiful reconciliation, very short-lived. David does not trust Shaul, and that's why he returns to the peaks, to the strongholds, to where only the ibex can live. He's not going to go back to the palace because he knows he'll get killed, because it's only going to take a moment and he will feel jealous again. Says Me'am Loez, you are more righteous than me. Shaul cried and acknowledged all he had done to David. But Shaul did not stand by his word. It was not long before Shaul returned to his old ways and resumed his persecution of David, as we'll see in the coming chapters. Shaul cried and acknowledged all that he'd done to David, everything, all the terrible things he'd done. And then he says here, now I know you will rule. Says Rashi, Shero'eh ani she'akadosh baruch hu matzilcha miyadi. I see that God saves you from my hand. Umidrash Agada, but there's also Midrash. Siman Ze Masalo Shmuel, Shakorea Me'ilo, Yimloch Tachtav. As the Midrash says, the sign specifically, explicitly in the text, a few chapters earlier, was the one who would tear your garment would rule after you. Says the Radak, Ve'efshar gam ken, sheshama shemishcho Shmuel limloch. It's also possible that Shaul had heard that Shmuel anointed David king. Says Imam Loez a little bit deeper. Shaul realized that one of the signs of a leader is his ability to control his desires and emotions, something I'm still working on. As David's son Shlomo said, he who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who controls his spirit than the conqueror of a city. As we say in Pirkei Avot, based on this pasuk in Mishlei, Ezehu Gibor, who is strong, HaKoveshet Yitzra. And what's the proof text which is given there? This verse in Mishlei. And what does it mean, you shall surely rule? The double language implies that David will rule in this world and the world to come. And that's why we sing every time, David, Melech Yisrael, Chai, Chai, V'kayam. David shall live forever, meaning in the world to come. And please God, we should merit to have the Mashiach through Zot Chanukah, through lighting the 8th night tonight. And Elliot, you've already done it, but please God, in a few hours, we'll be lighting the Zot Chanukah, the 8th night, and we'll be ready to welcome Mashiach ben David, and we can celebrate all. Have a wonderful, wonderful last day of your Chanukah, and I'll see you soon.